Hi, everybody. Welcome to the New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today I have a treat for you. One of my fellow volunteers at the VeriDAO is here to have a little chat. I wanted to give a little update on what's happening over at the VeriDAO and in the whole world of a Veritan, and just let you know what's going on in the crypto markets and in the world. So we'll be right back with Trey Cup right after this. Hi, Trey. Thanks for joining us here on the New Normal.
Hey, Lisa. Hope all is well with you.
All is great. It's very, very well over here.
Good to
We
hear.
got some great news from the Coinbase case. It seems like nobody's talking about it, of course, but we've been
Anything good for Reggie,
chatting it up.
nobody's going to talk
Yeah.
about.
It's crazy. It's like, the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
But I was really excited to hear that news about Coinbase trying to get that their case dismissed and the judge refusing that. So I think that's definitely a strong position for
Yeah, a
Reggie
little
and his
background
case.
on that. There's several people from the Veritasium community and the Twitter sphere and just folks in general that follow Reggie because he's been such a oracle about the way that economies go. A lot of people follow him on the Boom Bust blog. But he's got a $350 million lawsuit against Coinbase, and the backdrop is that, and most people don't know this, the backdrop is that he gave Coinbase a heads up for a very long period of time. I think it was a year, gave them notice that they were infringing on his technology, his intellectual property. And so time went by and he tried to do the right thing, and they kind of had some backs and forths and some discussions, and they never would kind of do the right thing and come to the table. So he ended up having to sue them. And when you sue somebody in court, I think this court case is actually being filed in Delaware, which is where a lot of intellectual property cases are filed. When you sue somebody, there's kind of a, okay, I'm the plaintiff, I'm making this claim against the defendant. Then the defendant gets a period of time to say, hey, this is not right. This is something that we shouldn't even be in court for. And so it's kind of a staged kind of two-step dance that the defendant and the plaintiff go through. And it's how every court case goes. And so, the plaintiff, in this case, Reggie Middleton, puts forth a set of claims stating that Coinbase is infringing on his IP and that he's owed either them buying a license or remuneration in the form of money to make up for the fact that they've been ignoring his notice that they're infringing on his IP. So they filed a motion to dismiss, saying that Reggie Middleton had no standing to sue them. And the judge said, looked at the IP on one hand, and he looked at the claim on the other, and he said, no, I'm sorry, Reggie Middleton has 100% the right to sue you, and it looks like he has a case. So that was thrown out. The motion to dismiss by Coinbase was thrown out. And the exciting thing now is that we get to go on to the part of the case where Reggie gets to find out all the dirty little secrets about Coinbase. He gets to
Disclosure.
Yeah, he gets to find out. So he gets to file some
For
disclosure
discovery.
notices.
Is it discovery?
Well, it's
Is that what
discovery.
it's
Yeah,
called?
you're right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
discovery is where he gets to ask all kinds of questions about what they knew and when they knew it, and gets to find out about their internal financials. Of course, that's public knowledge since they're a public company now, but he gets to find out about how much money they've made to date. So he gets an extra transparent look at their financials, which Reggie's a master at breaking those financials down and saying,
I was going to say he's already done that huge report showing all of their financials and that they were actually they were
That was a
insolvent at
beautiful
one
report,
point,
100
or
and
yeah.
114 pages, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly.
Yeah,
And
you can find that at the Best blog as well.
yeah, yeah, a very, very detailed breakdown of not only their financials, how much money they raised from their IPO, where they spend their money. Um, typical Reggie fashion. It's detailed to the nth degree. And so, during discovery now going forward in the Coinbase case, what Reggie gets to do is present his claims tables to the judge and say, listen, here's the claims that I was given by the USPTO, the United States Patent Office, and here's a clear example of where Coinbase infringes on the property. They've built their whole business upon tenants that I invented back in 2014. And, here in black and white is their infringement. And here's how much money they've made off of using my property over the years. So, exciting for Reggie because now it's time to look at the facts. And the judge, I don't think that there's any way the judge can try the facts without coming to the conclusion that Coinbase is infringing. And guess what? Since they have prior notice, a long prior notice of their infringement, the judge could rule in favor of Reggie Middleton to the tune of 3 times damages. So the lawsuit is actually worth, I think, a little over $1 billion if it
Wow.
plays out in Reggie Middleton's favor. Yeah.
And that's just the first step, or the first person on a long list of
Yeah.
possible
I mean,
companies
if
or
we're
people
going to be
infringing.
honest, if we're going to be honest, and we're talking about the number of entities that are in the crypto space, and we're just talking the crypto space at this point. If we're just talking the number of entities that are in the crypto space, Coinbase, of course, is the most high profile. They get the most press. They're the first company to go IPO from the crypto space. Um, you know, Coinbase is not by far the biggest of the companies. Binance, I think, by volume does much bigger volume. But if you aggregate all of the centralized exchanges, we're talking about Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, you know, um, on and on and on. There's
Yeah.
centralized exchanges in every country. You go to South Korea, you go to all of there's Canadian, there's South American. I mean, on and on and on. The volume is incredible. In fact, we're working on at the VeriDAO. We're working on a pretty big project right now, and part of the data that we're putting together as we're analyzing the volume that are settled in crypto exchanges, and we did volume and settled in crypto exchanges on a centralized basis, on a decentralized basis, and then there's derivatives. And there's between 90 right now, and we're kind of in a crypto winter, so the volume is down significantly from where it used to be. But on a daily basis, a 24-hour basis, there are about 95 to $100 billion in settlements in swaps that are done every day in just the crypto space. If you expand that market out to the legacy space, you're talking about 1.1 to 1.2 trillion dollars. So it expands significantly when you go into the legacy market. And so you know if you do the math on some of those numbers, the typical fee for intellectual property is somewhere around, depending on what the exchange is. There could be anywhere from a fee of 1% down to 0.05%. Is typically the deal that is made when you're using somebody else's intellectual property on a product or service, or in this instance, the exchange of value. So if you break those numbers down, you can come to a quick conclusion that Reggie Middleton is owed a lot of money,
A
a
lot of
lot.
money. And I've tried to, alleviate fears and misinformation when I've had these talks with Reggie before, when we have a VeriDAO channel that we do a lot of education on, and I always try to bring this up, but Reggie gives a great explanation of, because everybody wants to know what happens to me. Reggie's going to take down crypto, and I'm like, that's not at all what's
It's the biggest
happening.
misperception in crypto.
Yes, Veritasium is a truth machine. It actually is, I see him as like the big brother of DeFi or finance, central, capital markets.
He's really the godfather of finance, of decentralized finance, and he would call it peer-to-peer capital markets, but yeah.
Right. And he gave the example of, talking about how much IP is in cell phones and how there's constantly battles about one company finding out the other company is using their IP, and you keep using your phone and you don't have any disruption in using your phone. However, Apple may be paying Samsung because they came to a settlement or there was a lawsuit or whatever, and they had to work out a deal for using that license, for using that IP.
Yeah.
And that's what will end up technically happening, correct, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, the cell phone analogy, I think, is something that most people can relate to because everybody uses a cell phone. I don't, my dad avoided having a cell phone. He's 78, 79 years old, and he avoided using a cell phone till just a couple of years ago, but even he capitulated and bought one. But the truth is that in order for a product or a service to improve at the speed of technology, it has to use ideas that are added to the original patent. So the original patent for a cell phone was filed a long time ago. And over the years, the smartphone or the Samsung phone that is produced has accumulated and used over 1,200 intellectual property licenses. And that goes from everything to how small the processor is, to the cameras, to and the reason that we have the interconnectedness that we have in the cell phone industry in the world today is because somebody had the bright idea of patenting a cell phone. And then the idea is that in order for humanity to take steps forward, new technology, new property is brought to bear on that technology, which builds it up and makes it better and improves humanity. And so that's what cracks me up about people saying, "Oh, Reggie's trying to destroy the crypto industry by patenting value exchange." No, that's not true. That's 180 degrees from reality. The reality is that back in 2013, he thought up the idea of swaps. He actually produced a video on YouTube, I think in 2014, with his CFO.
His children. Oh, I thought it was the one with his children
CFO.
first.
No, it was CFO Matthew. He
Okay.
actually digitized a unit of Apple share and swapped it for a portion of a Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. So he actually programmed swaps not on the Ethereum blockchain, but on the Bitcoin blockchain, and did it live in 2014. So anybody that says, "Oh, Ethereum came out with it first," he didn't invent swaps. Well, Ethereum didn't come out with their ICO until 2015, and Reggie's patents were filed in 2014. So he was obviously the first one to come and invent it and patent it, which savvy businessmen always do. But the intent of the patent was to say, here's a great idea. Here's how we can use distributed ledger to clean up the system in equities, bonds, Forex swaps, credit default swaps, IPOs. Here's how we could clean out the whole system, insurance, and make it equitable and fair for everybody without middlemen taking 30 to 50%. Gary Gensler's famous for saying in his MIT classes, "Hey, you only got to give up 30 to 50% of your project to liquefy it and make it go." Well, Reggie thought that was not something that people, inventors, and entrepreneurs should have to do. So that's why he came up with the original idea of swaps and making those swaps peer-to-peer, getting rid of the Goldman Sachs, getting rid of the HSBCs, and giving more wealth and equity back to shareholders, inventors, and entrepreneurs. So, what his idea was for the crypto community to wrap their arms around his idea and build and bring new ideas and stack on
Mhm.
top of it while making crypto better and
Right.
giving the inventor the original credit, which is where it
It
should have gone.
and it really does align with Satoshi's vision of peer to peer.
Absolutely.
It is that peer-to-peer markets. It is the truth machine. It's about not having the middlemen, take all the profits. That's where it's just so wild that some people have been misled by this open source movement. Not that open source is bad. Open source can be good. You can choose to make something open source, but you
Yeah.
can also patent it so that you retain control of it, so that somebody else doesn't come in and take it and do something evil with it.
Well,
Um,
open source is a great idea if you want to improve on fundamental foundational ideas. Okay. I believe in open source in certain
mhm,
circumstances, 100%. If you're dealing with ideas that need collaboration from engineers and scientists from Russia and from South America and from Alaska and MIT and the best minds in the world, open source is a great idea. But you're not going to find back up a few hundred years, you're not going to find Alexander Graham Bell putting his idea for a telephone on open source because it's a foundational humanity changing idea, and you don't open source those sorts of ideas. Those are the solid foundation that you use to build great ideas, and then open source other ideas that build on top of it.
absolutely. I have two quick articles I want to discuss with you. We
Sure.
have been in our own battle secondary as token holders in the secondary markets.
Hmm.
Um, and part of it today, well, I think this announcement was on Monday. There's been a long history of these guys. Um,
Every time I
Gary.
see his face, I want to crawl into the
Oh,
corner.
I know.
It makes my skin
Do
crawl.
you know he has a twin?
I saw that. I saw that the other day, and I was just like,
I
"That's
couldn't
too
imagine.
coincidental,"
Yeah,
you know?
it's kind of, yeah, I can't imagine. Anyway, we'll keep those comments to myself. But
Right.
the I this so it was my understanding that Congress makes laws, and I think someone should let
Hmm.
Gary know about that. That his little man syndrome, or wherever he thinks he got his wand to wave this around and make
Yeah.
these statements, but he has decided that now, which I think this is really curious. I don't know what shift may have changed or happened. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this, because for a long time they have drug along Ethereum when they make statements of Bitcoin, and they'll say things like it, like Litecoin, decentralized uh, cryptocurrencies, but they would say and Ethereum
Yeah.
when they would say are not securities, and then they would say pretty much everything else is. They've dropped that here. Um, do you think something's changed? What do you think's going on here that all of a sudden this is this
Yeah.
sweeping
It's
statement from the little man with his wand?
it's uh, you know from the Veritasium community standpoint, and I guess I can you know centralize that more and say from my perspective, I've been involved in the Veritasium platform for years. I followed Reggie early on, Boom Bust blog, through creation of Veritasium, through the initial distribution offering. Um, it's funny that Gary comes up with this because Ben Armstrong at BitBoy Crypto
Mhm.
just came up with a video which we
It's
posted on
great.
Twitter, which is
Mhm.
hilarious. He said, you know, I can make a pretty good case using Gary Gensler's logic that Windex is a security. And he goes and says, if I buy some Windex for $1 at the dollar store, and then I go to Amazon and I use the Amazon web service and I use the Amazon team to promote it, and I sell it for $1.50, I'm depending on the efforts of others to make a profit. And I wonder if Gary would think that makes a bottle of Windex a security.
Well,
Um,
Girl Scout cookies. I mean, That's
I mean,
a real
it
hustle
just
there, depending on the efforts of others to make a
100%,
buck.
100%. But you
Yeah.
know what? Where I wish Ben would have taken that argument was back to the oranges in the Howie
Oh,
case, which is the gold standard of what the SEC
yeah.
relies on to kind of point the security stick at everybody. You know, neither you know oranges were the product that were being sold during the Howie test, but the actual issuer was selling shares of interest in the orange groves.
Mhm.
So, you bring that back to Ethereum, for example, which Gary's now trying to destroy. Um, and you can say, well, the Ethereum token has nothing to do with the Ethereum Alliance or consensus or any of the guys that are pushing the Ethereum blockchain and what it can do for us. And they're 100% correct. And that's something that, I've talked to a lot of SEC attorneys before, and they'll say, well, you really have to go down to the base level where the issuer was making money. And
Mhm.
that's one of
The
the things that's
offering is
offering,
what,
exactly.
yeah, Nick was
The
talking
offering
about
is
the offering.
what they're trying to regulate. And in the Howey test, the offering, they attack the offering, and us at the VeriDAO, most of us have Veritasium tokens, hold Veritasium tokens, have relentlessly tried to get clarity from the SEC through attorneys and through FOIA requests about what we're holding. Hey, listen, the orange in the Howey test was not a security. Therefore, I can say the Veri token in the Veritasium case is not a security also, which interesting enough, the library folks have been going through a pretty rigorous run through the mill at the SEC for about 2.5 years. The library token's been battling
Mhm.
the SEC, and they recently have taken this issue before a judge. I forget where it's being adjudicated, but the judge listened to John Deaton. Big shout out to John Deaton doing
Yeah.
yeoman's work for the crypto space. But they brought up the issue of secondary market token holders, and the judge says, "Listen, I can't." He basically in open court says, "I can't see where these token holders are fair game for the SEC, because the SEC was coming down hard. They were asking for the whole shooting match. They want
Mhm.
everything under their purview."
Yeah.
And it just gets down to, I think, an issue of greed, because the SEC, I mean, if they really could make the argument about Windex being a security, I think they would make that argument.
Mhm.
And so the SEC is, been collecting funds from the crypto community and from banks and from legacy institutions for years and years and years. And that money kind of goes into a black hole of slush funds that nobody ever can trace and nobody ever knows where they goes. And in the case of the Veritasium, um,
The Very
case
Fair
against,
Fund.
yeah, the Very Fair Fund was created in 2019, I think, shortly after the settlement that Reggie made with the SEC. The Very Fair Fund, they said, "Oh, just we'll let you know what the rules are for collecting some of this loot that we stole from Reggie." So they took what amounts to $17 million in assets. It was 30,000 Ethereum. It was gold. It was his own personal Bitcoin. It was um, cash. I think they took $10 million in cash. Today, those same assets would be worth $80 million if they would have just left it in place. But I think they
Wow.
liquidated them and created a slush fund of $17 million. Well, in the Veritasium community, less than 1% of us filed claims to get some of that money back, because we were the defrauded, according to
Mhm.
the SEC. But of the 20 plus thousand wallets, less than 1% filed claims. And of those who filed claims, not one red cent has ever been given back to a claimant, not that I know of. Um,
So
you
I
know,
spoke with Nick from ICANN about that. He's a former SEC prosecuting, or
yeah,
is that
Nick's
right?
great.
Prosecuting attorney? Yes.
He was a
We
prosecuting attorney with the SEC for 2 or 3 years in his previous career.
Yeah, and we've interviewed him a couple times on the VeriDAO channel. And so I was asking him about, this, because at the bottom of the settlement, or maybe it's the bottom of the Very Fair Fund statement, it talks about that any monies under 200 million would stay in the SEC's fund,
Mhm.
and not go to the Treasury. And he explained to me the pathway that goes. And he said what happens is they use those funds for whistleblowers and to pay people off to who
Yeah. No
tattle
telling where
and
those
send.
funds go. I
So
mean,
that's
it's
their
never audited,
payoff money.
you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's never audited. Um, Speaking of, I know we have been in pursuit of some FOIA, and pursuit of the truth seems to be a theme for the very DAO.
Mhm.
And some of the other volunteers and I were doing some research last night or over the weekend, and bumped
Mhm.
into the Heritage Foundation. And this win kind of escaped me. I didn't know if you had seen this. They were able to receive through FOIA some
Mhm.
emails where Senator Warren is exchanging emails with the SEC, and they are collaborating on questions and answers of how they're going to respond at this oversight, at this Exchange Commission hearing. Check
Yeah,
this
that's
out.
criminal.
It is
That's
so
criminal.
criminal. And Gary's working with them. And they're like, and you're going to give us a softball answer. Check this out.
All right, a bombshell report tonight about how Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and her
Pocahontas.
office coordinated testimony
Can you
with the
hear?
Security and Exchange Commission ahead of a Senate hearing. The Heritage Foundation Oversight Project, of which I'm associated, through a FOIA request, obtained emails from Warren's office to the office of Chairman Gary Gensler 2 days before his Senate testimony back in September of 2021. The email from Warren's economic policy advisor includes a list of questions. Get this, a list of questions that Senator Warren planned to ask, along with suggested answers for the chairman of the SEC. The advisor also wrote, quote, "Let me know if you're okay with the questions as currently written." 2
Lord
days
have
later,
mercy.
a follow-up, quote, "Let me know if it's looking like the chair has any issue with the framing of the questions. Definitely don't want to put him in a tough spot," end quote. And it appears the chairman didn't have any issue with these questions because Senator Warren asked almost verbatim from the email. Check this out.
Chair Gensler, advocates say crypto markets are all about financial inclusion, but the people who are most economically vulnerable are the ones who are most likely to have to withdraw their money the fastest when the market drops. Does this sound like the path to financial inclusion to you?
Is that just criminal?
That's insane. You know, the government here in the United States has been acting more and more like a organized mafia rather
Yes.
than a representative government of we the people. Um, you know, you look at how they're picking winners and losers. You know, the Twitter files I think has been a godsend to wake most people up
Mhm.
because everybody has been assuming for years and years and years that the government, you know, is collecting taxes and acting on the people's best interest because we're the ones that elect them and put them in office. But you know, when you've got a centralized authority, and this is we were talking before we got on
Mhm.
about, you know, the solution to most of our problems is decentralization. But when you've got a government over the decades and years that they've been um, making plans behind the scenes, the more centralized things get, the less things go well for the people, and the more criminal that they're able to act on. Let's take the border for example. You know, the federal government, one of their, you know, duties and responsibilities besides you know, holding a standing army, protecting our infrastructure and protecting our borders, there's very few things that I think the government should be empowered to do. And the 10th Amendment says anything not included in the Constitution goes back to the states. Well, that's decentralization. But over the years, the central government has consolidated power under the executive authority, and you know, at the border, we've got 5 million people a year crossing the border right now. And it's just by executive statements that the president is now able to run roughshod over the statutes and codes that not only states have written, but the federal government has in place. So more and more, it seems like the centralized power that we have here in the United States is acting hand in glove with the Sinaloa cartel, other state actors like the CCP, and they're acting against the interests of the people of the United States. So, at some point, we're all going to have to start stepping up and doing our part. And I think that when the Satoshi white paper came out in 2009, it was such a revolutionary idea because it gave we the people all the power in the world to take back finance, to take back our banking system, to take back and control our own destinies. And I think that's one of the things that Reggie Middleton really kind of fell in love with when he read the white paper. And then he thought up the idea of swaps is, hey, let's give the power back to the people. Let's the way to cut the, the giant off at the knees when it's acting against you is to have a few mechanisms which give power back to the people. And so, until we recognize, a large majority of us recognize that we have that power, things are going to continue down a path of conflict. And I think there's going to be a lot of pain involved, but we've got to continue down the road of taking back the power that we've ceded. And one of the ways that the centralized banking system co-opted and took the Bitcoin idea and made it their own is through the futures market. The Bitcoin never did have a spot ETF because that would make the guys that are financializing Bitcoin have to put their money where their mouth is. But instead, they have unlimited power of the fiat system to raise or destroy the Bitcoin market. You'll notice that in the rise up of the Bitcoin market, and I've been in it since 2012. The rise of the Bitcoin market through 2017 was going great. It was going unbelievably well until the middle of December 2017 when the first futures market was introduced and they shorted
the legacy market didn't like
they
the
basically
little guys.
they naked shorted the whole market and crushed it. And so everybody who bought at 19,000, mortgaged their house and sold their cars to get into Bitcoin ended up wrecked in a disaster. And so, they've been working ever since then. I think this is a long-term plan. And when I say they, I mean the central banks, the bankers, the financial guys like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have been working on a way to kill the crypto market and take control of it. And then I think that there's a point in time where they're going to buy up all the assets cheap. The Rothschilds were really good at this. When the Napoleonic Wars were going on, the Rothschilds financed both sides of the war. And one of the ways that the Rothschilds in England took most of the gilts, which are the British bonds, was they fed disinformation into the financial system. And then I think it was Jacob Rothschild, or maybe it was one of the original Rothschilds. I can't remember which one was in Great Britain. He sent his horsemen from the front lines back before everybody else and figured out that the one side was winning and one side was losing. And he told the market the opposite of that. So they sold, and he picked up all the assets at 2 cents to 5 cents on the dollar. And then when the real news hit, his bonds went up tremendously. So that's the same thing that the banks are doing today to the crypto market. And they're using false flags, just like the Rothschilds did in the Napoleonic Wars way back when. They're using false flags like FTX to try to cripple the crypto market. And I think we haven't seen the best of their efforts come to the table yet. The FTX was, I think, the opening salvo. But they're going to try to crater the crypto market, buy up the assets at a huge discount, and then control the crypto market with those assets when they have them in hand.
So they'll do that with something like introducing the CBDCs and using stable coins to enter the derivatives into the crypto market to try to.
Yeah, they did that when they introduced futures markets in Bitcoin.
Okay.
And futures markets, you can basically naked short or naked long. If you have Fed window access, you can get as much money as you need to manipulate a market. It's been happening in silver and gold. Your friend Bix Weir has cataloged that battle for years and years and years with the
Yeah.
LBMA and the COMEX exchange, how they get unlimited fiat paper money to manipulate where the markets go, and they can keep it in a certain range if inflation doesn't run too hot. In the silver market, you see when inflation runs hot, they kind of lose control, and silver went to $50 in the early 80s because they lost control of inflation. The same thing is happening today.
So you think that's the trigger again, is that if they don't raise the debt ceiling, and Powell was quoted as saying, like, look, it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to be able to stop this thing if they don't raise the debt ceiling at some point, and we're going to go into that
Yeah, but who's
hyperinflation,
going to
and
buy our
that's when
debt?
they lose
There's
control of it.
Nobody's
Right?
going to
There's
buy
no
our debt.
one.
The Fed, yeah, no,
Yeah.
the Fed is actually buying up all of our debt.
Their own debt.
That's the
Yes.
only buyer. Yeah, that's the only buyer that's kept the crippled system going this long.
Yeah. The
Honestly, I thought
monster's
this
eating
system was
itself kind of
I thought
thing.
this system was going down in 2012. I thought it was.
Wow.
I thought Bitcoin was perfectly positioned to absorb the inflation that was going to come out, and I was right all up until 2017 when they introduced futures and killed the Bitcoin market. But all of that is to say this: there is a great amount of corruption in the system, tremendous amounts of corruption in the system.
Mhm.
And the only way that we are going to come out of this system, the system's going to fail. It's going to collapse
Mhm.
under the weight of its own stupidity, under the weight of its own irrepayable
Greed.
debt. Yeah, the greed is going to.
Mhm.
If you look back in history, every system has collapsed because of greed. You go back to um, the major cycles, and it always happens this way. Rome was burning, and they were still thinking that they were in charge, and that's
Wow.
the place that we find ourselves at today.
Mhm.
But when it collapses, it's going to collapse very quickly, and how we rebuild our system is going to determine how the next 1,000 years is going to go for humanity. It's going to determine how our kids are going to either live in slavery or be free men and women.
Wow.
And my assertion is that if we rebuild the system based on peer-to-peer technology, based on the freedom to trade with who you want to without a middleman involved, without any counterparty risk, with the Veritasium idea as the foundational element, then we have a chance. If we rebuild the system based on a central bank that has the new thing coming out, the CBDC, or whatever else other kind of crap they try to
Yeah.
feed us,
Anything that's
we'll make the
controlled
same
by
mistakes
someone
we've just
else.
made.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll end up
Yeah.
on the same path a few years later.
Absolutely. Well, I love being a part of the VeriDAO and volunteering my time, and it just feeds my soul. It gives me something. I feel like I have an opportunity to fight back in this fight for truth and freedom, and I'm grateful to do it alongside you. I've learned
Yeah.
so much from you, so I really appreciate you and
Oh yeah, thank
all
you.
that you've done
You know,
to teach me.
the best disinfectant for the darkness is the truth. And so, as long as your
Right.
heart sings with truth and you're not afraid to tell it, and you've done a great job at the VeriDAO, and I've been following your other channels and other interviews you've done. As long as you bring that light to the table and shine that light in this world, we have a chance.
Thank you.
It's when good men and women do nothing that we have capitulated and that we collapse into the darkness. And so, thank you for what you do for us.
Well, I appreciate it. I love it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right,
You guys,
cool.
please check out the links in the description of this video. I've got our website for VeriDAO. You can get more information. There's also documents on there. You can see the work that we do there, and we have a lot of people working hard there as a team. And we also have our Twitter handle. We've got great information out there. We've got a whole team that is cutting edge with what's going on in the crypto world and the news there, as well as our YouTube channel. So all of those links are in the description here. Check that out and fight for the truth with us.
That's
So
right.
we'll see you
And
guys.
we're going to be coming out with a couple of things here in the
Oh,
near
yeah.
future. We're going to be coming out with a report that was done by one of our members about why the Veri token is not a security. So we're going to make a hard case for that. We have some legal opinions to back that up. And I can't let the cat out of the bag just yet, but we're working on a very big project, which I think a lot of people are going to be interested in hearing about. So stay tuned.
Huge. Yeah. See you guys.